Welcome, first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli. To find out more about the Sports Deli Podcast, check us out online at thesportsdelipodcast.com. And whether you're folding laundry, driving, exercising, or cooking, grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. We're so incredibly honored to welcome on this 5th day of National Ice Cream, Baked Bean, and Hot Dog Month, Hootie Hoot. This is a special edition of the Sports Deli Podcast. It's also World Watercolor and Horseradish Month. And mad shout out, big ups, mad props to Joey Chestnut for again winning his 14th hot dog eating contest with a record 76 hot dogs. So as a girl dad, we're dedicating this Bet on Women special edition podcast to a number of women who have been in the news recently and who continue to inspire and make a difference and an impact and be influencers and connectors, not only as women, but in particular, many of the women that I'm going to talk about today of the Black and Brown community. And because women still get very little press coverage, make 60 cents on the dollar compared to their white male counterparts, we must continue to educate and raise awareness and continue the discussion that a lot of these situations allow us to do. And anything short of death, as I've said, is an opportunity to talk about these particular women or men, but in particular today, women of the Black and Brown community, to educate white people about white supremacy, about the disproportionate number of things that continue to happen, whether it's in jail for Blacks for nonviolent offenses, in particular marijuana, as a result of the third strike and you're out or mandatory minimums that people that I know and people that I don't know are fighting to get people who have been in jail for these types of situations, their sentences thrown out or reduced or new trials given because there's no way that people should be in jail for a lot of the things. And again, they're disproportionate to the Black and Brown and Latino communities. So, I'm coaching these high school girls this summer, as I did 2 years ago. My daughter, who's going to be 11, has come to a lot of these practices, and 2 of the girls are twins from Arizona, and I've been coaching them for the better part of 6 summers. And I coached men for 15 years, and this is my 15th year on the women and girls side, my 30th year coaching. I know I don't look that old. Thank you. But, the more that I realize, the more I've heard guests come on our podcast, like Jay Billis and the 13 WNBA or future WNBA players and coaches or others, that didn't necessarily have great experiences in high school or didn't play varsity until their senior year. Or one of my clients who's got cut 3 times like I did, and still hasn't played a minute of high school basketball, but still has a dream to play college basketball and possibly professionally because he has such a passion for it. But the more I realize how important it is to give girls, as we are rapidly approaching next year in 2022, the 50th anniversary of Title IX, which among other things, discusses and requires by federal law equal opportunity for women, working towards equal opportunities for women. In college athletics, it's very difficult to have equal numbers because of football, but to have the same number of opportunities in terms of the number of sports. So even if you have a women's golf team and football, women's golf is going to have 8 women. Football is going to have 80 men. So you'll never have the same number of people, but you'll have equal opportunities. So as I'm coaching these girls, you know, I'm realizing how important it is for them to feel empowered. And we have white girls, we have people of the Asian community, we have biracial, we have girls of the Black and brown community. And just to see how excited they are to be a part of this opportunity, which I'm a part of a nonprofit called Breakaway Basketball. So most of the kids are on scholarship. So flowers to the Baldwins and what they've allowed both the men and the boys and the girls on scholarship to do the last 4 summers, being a part of these club basketball teams, boys and girls varsity teams. They provide uniforms, they provide opportunities. Some people pay, but most do not. They cannot. Most of the people on the team are of low income first generation status, which means that obviously they're at a certain level economically, fiscally, as a family. And a lot of the families' parents do not speak English. They're first generation, which means they've not graduated from college. The kids that are on these teams are going to be the first that go to college. Some parents have gone to college, but many have not. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity to help them feel empowered, to give them tools, life skills that allow them not only to succeed in basketball, but in life off the court, and to let them know that there are resources out there that allow them the opportunity, even though they were born into situations that were not their fault, that still will allow them to bridge the gap between Black and white America. And so it's been another great summer. And in particular with the girls, it's just great to see them trying their things that we work on in private training, and to see them come together. We've already had several wins this summer, and that's not the end all be all, but teaching them how to win, how to handle stress, how to self-sacrifice, how to handle adversity. Those things are all invaluable. And a lot of times, I know for myself, I didn't realize a lot of these things until later. The value of having people in strong leadership positions. Obviously, I'm not a woman, but they've had the opportunity to have Delana Sampson, former Division I assistant coach at UCSD, for these 10 days while I'm on vacation. So they have the opportunity to have a male and a female, and she is a woman of color, fighting for equality and for social justice and against social injustice. And so honored to have her. Flowers to Delana for helping me while I'm gone and being such an incredible role model, caring about these girls, having an extra practice that 10 girls showed up for at 10 a.m. in the morning, and it just shows, it speaks to the Baldwins, it speaks to the girls' commitment to want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so it's just been a wonderful opportunity, wins aside, to impact young girls' lives and young boys as well, but young girls' lives in particular, what we're talking about today, betting on women and betting on girls, giving them these things in terms of tools and memories that they'll carry with them forever, because a lot of them do not have great high school experiences. I think my girls do, but a lot of the girls do not. And so the summertime is a time for reflection, for growth, to work on your games. That's when players are made, learning how to win, not necessarily learning to win. And then carrying those tools with them, not only during their regular school years with their varsity or JV or freshman teams, but in life off the court. So I want to give a shout out to a number of women in particular of the Black and Brown community who have, in my eyes, made an impact, been influencers in their own ways, or nationally or internationally, and deserve props as we continue to educate and listen and learn and try and pay it forward, especially to our mostly white listeners. And the more that you can have those conversations in the corners of your homes and in your inner circles, to not only be against racism, but to be anti-racist, is one of the things that we hope that you consider. Nobody likes anything that is forced on them, including yours truly. But hopefully we approach things in a way where we're sharing stories or sharing special editions like this one, where we raise awareness, and hopefully it speaks to you or strikes a chord in a way where you can do it in your own way to pay it forward yourself and help ultimately the girls that I talked about, the future generations, which ultimately that's what it's about, and who are going to be the ones that bridge this gap more than any of the other generations, because the adults are the ones that are a little bit more difficult to get to commit to this type of thing or change their views. A lot of people are set in their ways. So in no particular order, first I want to talk about Simone Biles and what an incredible example she has been to young girls, not just gymnasts like my daughter, who's going to be 11 this October, but just of girls and even women in the Black and Brown community. And, not only redefining some of the things that she does as a gymnast, but overcoming some of the things that she has overcome in her childhood as an adopted young woman of color, a child of color, obviously back then, and how hard that must have been in and of itself, and the amazingly loving home that she had to feel supported and to pursue her dreams. It's just an incredible story. Can't wait to watch her and her teammates in the Olympics. If my memory serves me correctly, this will be an all African-American women's gymnastics team in Tokyo. So another incredible acknowledgement that I didn't want to go unnoticed. I want to talk about Naomi Osaka, who has raised awareness, as have other major professional sports leagues, Kevin Love, Asia Wilson, and players in the NFL, to make mental health and depression less taboo, to help people publicly realize, especially in the Black and Brown community, that this isn't something that you should hide from. We don't need to roast people for it, label people, call people names, but talk about it as it's a real thing, and, help people in any way that they need, whether it's calling the suicide prevention hotline or having support groups on Clubhouse, a new social audio app. Green Room is another one. Facebook's going to have their version of a social audio app. Twitter will as well, or you go read a book, or you talk to friends, or get, formal help in terms of therapy. But mad shout out to Naomi Osaka, number 2 tennis player in the world, for going public. And that impacts a lot of people to see that she was able to talk about it, that she has anxiety, and she didn't want to attend her press conferences at one of the majors, in terms of the 4 majors in tennis. And so she was going to be fined $15,000, and she decided to quit. And I believe it was the French Open. Then she quit. She decided not to come to Wimbledon because she was still working on herself. So big sacrifices that she gave up financially, but she needed to work on her mental health. And so, sometimes medicine is needed. Sometimes it's somatic therapy. Sometimes it's just, going to therapy to have proper tools in your toolbox. You don't always want to do things that repress the issues that someone's dealing with. But you definitely want to face these things head on. And so the more that you can do that, even though it's hard in the beginning, those are the steps, the awareness, being aware of what's going on and not being afraid to talk about it and deal with these things, that can help liberate you and help you take that step forward and, find the courage to follow your dreams, follow your passions. And Naomi is somebody who, allows people to see that it's okay to be vulnerable and to have something that is hard on a daily basis to deal with, but there is support and there are solutions out there. Props to the women's soccer team, the national women's soccer team, for, fighting for equal pay and continuing to play at a high level. Looking forward to watching them in the Olympics as well. Candace Parker, first WNBA player on the cover of NBA 2K. Let's go. An amazing player with the Chicago Sky. We had Coach Wade, the head coach of the Sky, right here in the Sports Deli. So if you haven't checked that out, selfish plug, go on any of the podcast platforms and find the interview with Coach Wade, two-parter. His wife, Edwig Lawson Wade, was also on the podcast, former WNBA player. Another amazing interview with her. We've had 13 WNBA players and coaches and future players on the show. And, it's a big part of our show, a commitment to women. We're going to have Olympia Scott and Odyssey Sims eventually on the podcast, and some other amazing guests upcoming that we'll be announcing soon. And Christian Okoye, former Kansas City Chief, the Nigerian Nightmare is coming up on the 20th of this month of July of 2021. So for those of you listening to this down the road, go back and check out that Christian Okoye podcast. We have George Lynch, former North Carolina Tar Heel and NBA player, coming on August 9th. So we're ecstatic about him coming on. And we have some others in the works. So again, mad shout out to Candace Parker. All the women at ESPN who continue to make a difference, from Maria Taylor to all of her colleagues that continue to show grace and professionalism. I only wish Jamel Hill was still working at ESPN. Her and Michael Smith got a raw deal in terms of speaking out against social injustice. They were co-hosts together on a show there, and then they decided to go to Sports Center, and they were sort of let go because they were so outspoken, which is more accepted now. But it's because of people like Jamel, who writes for The Atlantic. Check her out. Former Sparty, Michigan State Spartan, from Mumford High School in Detroit. Mad shout out to her. Mad props. She's on the Unbothered by Jamel Hill, and she also teams with Carrie Champion for a podcast. So love Jamel. I've had correspondence with her. She's just an amazing woman of color. Flowers to her and what she's doing for the Black and brown community, but especially doing everything she can to empower Black women. Sha'Carri Richardson. So she was found guilty of having a positive test for marijuana. So she was not eligible to run the 100 meters in the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo. And so she was also voted by the track and field team to not be a part of the 400. I think it's the relay team as well, even though she could have been eligible because her month-long suspension would have been up by the time the 400 would have began in Tokyo. But it speaks to a bigger issue about marijuana. And this is all I'll say. the International Committee, Rules Committee should change the rules on marijuana. Marijuana does not help anybody run faster. It helps to calm them down if they're depressed or have anxiety. And I understand that that is an argument on the other side. But if it's across the board for people to take, I think, or to use or smoke, or eat, I guess. I just think there's too many studies and we know too much now about the importance of it when it comes to Sha'Carri Richardson, an African-American woman who just lost her mother, who claims she was dealing with sadness and depression and anxiety, and, smoked marijuana because of the death of somebody so close to her like her mother. So it's unfortunate for her. Hopefully she'll be back in 2024 for the next Olympics. But, it's sad that the International Olympic Committee, the Olympic Committee's Rules Committee is so behind in terms of its educating themselves and this rule when it's legal in most states. And unfortunately, Sha'Carri Richardson is, losing out as a result of this. But hopefully down the road, we educate people more about marijuana and we can reference this situation and it doesn't happen again. Shout out to Maya Moore, who is a part of, I haven't seen it yet, but is a part of Breakaway, a new ESPN film that journeys and chronicles her flight for criminal justice and advocacy. And Maya Moore is a former WNBA player, and she basically sacrificed her WNBA career to fight for someone that was in jail for something they didn't do. And it's an incredible testament. I don't know how many people could do that. I know like Pat Tillman sacrificed his NFL career to go and be in the military and ended up dying, fighting for his country. But what Maya Moore has done as just one example of the strength and the sisterhood of the WNBA, as she fought for Jonathan Irons, and who is now her husband. Great love story. But check out Breakaway on ESPN. I plan on watching it real soon. By the time you listen to this, I'll probably have already seen it. But mad props to Maya Moore, arguably the GOAT, the WNBA, amazing college player, amazing professional player, amazing person. And I think her legacy will go down even more as an advocate in fighting for criminal justice and advocacy for people that are in jail, especially in the Black and brown community, for nonviolent offenses, for things they didn't do. And so that's such an important thing. I remember watching Just Mercy and listening to the audiobook, and some of the things that the Black and brown community have had to deal with, from death to everything in between, being in jail for decades for things that they didn't do, for nonviolent offenses. Particularly Just Mercy is about people on death row in the South in particular. It's just gut-wrenching. I had to put the audiobook down several times because I was just emotional listening to some of these stories. And so if you haven't checked that book out or listened to it or watched the movie, I encourage you to do so. Very powerful. And, we're definitely getting a lot more people to fight for these nonviolent offenses, for cannabis convictions that people have no business being in jail for, in my opinion. Next up, Serena. Always love talking about Serena Williams, who her and her sister Venus, I can't imagine being from Compton, being in a white sport, what they had to deal with growing up. And some of it's been chronicled, and I know much of it hasn't, because they've the families handled themselves with grace and dignity. Serena is now a mom, and what she's done to come back from being a mom, and her longevity is just incredible. Doesn't get enough media coverage. most African Americans. As Paige, college basketball player from Connecticut, said at the ESPYs this year, who was the college basketball player of the year. She was advocating for Black women to get more attention. Mad props to Paige and her speech and what she said. And I second what she said, that Black women and brown women do not get enough attention in this country, despite their incredible success. So it's just wonderful to see white people stepping up more than ever to advocate for the Black and brown community and the issues that still exist, from the gaps between education and healthcare, housing, small business, coaching. There's a lot of issues that still exist, and will continue to need allies like Paige and other whites in positions with platforms like this, and other people, Max Kellerman, from ESPN, and anybody else that can speak out against social injustice and the inequalities that still exist in this country. So mad props to Paige. From University of Connecticut women's basketball team, college basketball player of the year. She's white, and what she said to promote the Black and brown community, especially women who do not get the attention that they so richly deserve when it comes to media attention. Mad props to Adia Barnes, head coach of the Arizona Wildcats, former Wildcat herself, who was the runner-up this year in the women's NCAA national championship game, a woman of color, a mom, former WNBA player. What she's done to build that program is nothing short of incredible. Arizona was literally in the toilet before she got there, and what she's done to rebuild that program is incredible. So mad props to Adia. And to who she lost to, Tara Vanderveer, head coach of the Stanford Cardinal women, second national championship, the first being in 1992. Val Whiting was a part of that team, who was on our podcast, has been a guest host on our podcast. Check her out on TikTok. I am Coach Val. She's had millions and millions of views. She has empowerment training for young girls. She's just an incredible mom of two boys. Love Coach Val. And again, props to Tara Vanderveer, head coach of the women at Stanford, and her national championship this year with the Cardinal. Let's talk about Valerie Daniels Carter. If you haven't checked out her story, Google her. Mad props to her being a minority owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. She's been in that role since 2014. Props to the Milwaukee Bucks for getting to the NBA Finals. And props to Giannis. Hyperextended his knee. Looked like his knee was going to break and the leg was going to shatter and crack in half. And it's one of those ones that you just can't even watch it. And a week later, he's playing in the NBA Finals. It's like it never happened. Like, if you watch him move, you're like, how is the knee doing that? So the medical staff, man, huge props and mad shout out to you all. Probably some bone bruising still in there, but what they've done to, help him recover. Obviously, he's young. He was in great shape. So, a lot of luck involved there as well. But wow, incredible. And again, so Valerie Daniels Carter, one of the few women professional owners in sports, and one of the very few minorities as a woman of color. So credit to her and everyone else with the Milwaukee Bucks to help turn that program around. And, props to Phoenix also for what they've done to turn their organization around. They were an absolute unmitigated disaster a few years ago. And what they've done and what Chris Paul has brought to this organization has been nothing short of incredible. So props to both of them. Props to Valerie Daniels Carter. Phaedra Knight. Phaedra Knight is the president of Billie Jean King's Women's Sports Foundation. She is the founder of PSK Collective, which can be found at lids.com, target.com, walmart.com, pskcollective.com, TJ Maxx. We've had Phaedra who is in the Women's Rugby Hall of Fame on our show twice to tell her story and to talk about her PSK Collective clothing line, which promotes inclusivity. And so check her out, support her and the Women's Sports Foundation and pskcollective.com. You should check out some of her highlights of her playing rugby. You're going to be mind blown. It's what she does to people is borderline criminal. And then I'm going to finish with Allison Felix. So Allison Felix is also on the Olympic team as a women's track and field participant member. Nike was unwilling to pay mothers' fees. They asked Allison to take a 70% reduction in pay, and Allison basically flipped them the bird and said, this is ridiculous. And so she created a $200,000 childcare fund, left Nike, started the Sasha Collective organization, I guess, company, SAYSH, which includes shoes and other things, and also became a part of Athleta, ATHLETA. And so, between ESPN and Nike, they have had some controversy. Hopefully they work towards, being a better advocate and more supportive and having more consistency across the board. And when you have big conglomerates like this, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. There's a lot of hypocrisy that is evident. But hopefully Nike, which I know is doing the WNBA family promotion, and if you haven't checked that out, that's something that's allowing them to go in the right direction. Auntie Chantel, who was on our podcast, is involved in having a hand in that. And so, there are things that are in place to help across the board in all sports. The WNBA, especially with the 144 women that are a part of that, the new collective bargaining agreement that was in place to help increase pay for the WNBA women so that a lot of them don't have to go overseas and tax their bodies all year round during the off season. What happened with the women's NCAA tournament and the awareness that was talked about with the weight room situation where the men had an amazing weight room and the women didn't. And it was posted on social media. And within 2 days, we had a weight room facility for the women at the NCAA tournament. Now, it still wasn't equitable, but all of these things that we continue to talk about on this show, whether it's situations or people, again, as we approach the 50th anniversary of Title IX next year, continue to bring awareness. And, we have to make sure that these narratives are consistent across the board, because as we've said before, a lot of people of the Black and brown community listen to Black and brown people. A lot of people in the white community listen to white people, and in the Asian community, in the Latino communities, et cetera. And so it's important that we are a united front and that the sum of the parts are greater than the parts themselves, and that there are strength in numbers. So to all of these amazing women, we bet on women. And we hope that we continue to see more Black and brown men and women, in particular women, in leadership positions, because we believe that everyone deserves a seat at the table. And women deserve to be in all spaces and places where decisions are made. And until next time, remember, you can always send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. For Dr. J and Coach K, I'm Hootie Hoot. This has been a special edition to Bet on Women, our 80th episode here in the Sports Deli. I'm Hootie Hoot. Remember, it takes a village. Stop Asian hate. Black Lives Matter. And please mask up if you have not been vaccinated. Remember, love, not hate, is the answer. And until next time, peace.